Hi, this is JP Morgan. Welcome to the 360-degree view of lighting here on the Slanted Lens. Take a step with me into this 360-degree view where it's interactive. You can see exactly where we set each one of our lights. You'll be able to explore for yourself and see what we're doing. Let's take a look at a 1, 2, and 3 light setup here on the Slanted Lens. Let's get to it. Okay, let's take a look at our first light in this 3 light setup. This is the key light position. We learned about this in the last lesson. The first lesson was 5 portrait lighting positions in that 360-degree view of lighting. So today we're going to take and build on that. We're going to set our light in one of those 5 portrait lighting positions. So check that lesson out if you didn't get it. First off, I'm going to ask Raphael, what's your favorite portrait lighting position?
Good question.
I usually set my light in a Rembrandt. There's a couple of reasons. The one is that it gives you a nice look at the face, but it falls into shadows. So it gives you a foundation where you can make it either very moody and really interesting, or you can make it just kind of open and light as well. So Rembrandt is good. If I'm doing a fashion kind of a shoot, if I'm wanting to have just a lot of open light, I'll start with a butterfly. I'll roll this thing around and I'll set this right in front of my camera. So I get these beautiful kind of shadows on the side of the cheeks, drops into a nice shadow below her chin. And then I'll bring a fill card in and I'll bring this right up underneath her chin and I'll get right in there, and that just starts to give us a beautiful look at the face. So that's a fashion kind of approach, but for me, I usually start with a Rembrandt. I like the look of a Rembrandt. It just brings my light around. As I bring my light around, I'm now gonna get just a little triangle on the side of her face, on her left eye. Gives you that nice distinct triangle. Now from here, as we learned in that first lesson, I can take, and I'm going to do it right now, I'm going to move this light off from the background. I'm going to roll it towards the camera, and what that's going to do is it's going to make the background darker. If I roll this towards the background, it makes it lighter. If I move it away from the background, it's going to make it darker on the background. It also, if you look at what it does, it makes a larger triangle on her face because the light is starting to see into the side of the softbox. So if I don't want that large, I can slide this around, and I can get that nice Rembrandt. There we go. So that's our first light. That's our basic light. That's where we're going to start. But you look at that, and we could just go with that. But what we want is we want separation and depth. And the only way to create separation and depth is to use shadow, the primary way. You can use color, you can use a lot of different things, but the easiest and primary way when you're lighting is to use shadow definition. So right now, we don't see much of her hair on her camera left side. We don't see much of the hair here. We're not getting much separation in the background. So we're gonna add a light onto the background. This light I have a 300D2, but it's dialed down to like 3% because it's so powerful. But this is just going to give us a wash on the background. We're aiming it straight at the background. So it's really going to be a directional light. We'll turn that on right now. We immediately get separation in the background. Her hair separates. We're getting a nice separation all the way around. That background light maybe is too bright. We could dial it down a little bit if we wanted to. Go down to like 1%. If we want it to be really subtle, just to give us some subtle definition back there and to not be overpowering, but just some subtle definition. Is the light on her face too bright? Yeah, it's too bright. So we're gonna bring that down just a little bit here. So that's a nice portrait. If you look right here at me, Raphael, if you look at that, it's just a beautiful light. And just maybe look this way just a little bit, Raphael, right in there. There's just gorgeous light on her face. It falls into beautiful shadows. And you could shoot some very nice portraits here with just those 2 lights, a light to open up the background and a light to light her face. But there's still very deep shadows. There's a lot of work we can do to this to make it even better. So the first thing we're gonna do to give us a little more separation, to give us dimension separation, is we're going to bring in a rim light or a backlight on the camera right side or her left side. And that's going to separate her hair and give us just a little bit on the side of her cheek. We don't want this to be too bright. We want it just to be a little bit of a rim light on the side of her cheek on the camera left side or camera right side. A great way to set this light up, and it's a challenge I've always had with backlights, is finding a place for them. Getting that stand in the corner, have the stand not be out on the paper. It's always a challenge. So what we have here is we've got a junior pin receiver in the foot of that Savage stand. It's a 40-inch C-stand. And I can take another post, I can take a center post, and I just drop it into that receiver, and I can put my backlight right next to the C-stand that's holding up my backdrop. It's absolutely fabulous. It gets it in there, out of the way, and I don't have another stand that's going to get on my backdrop and get in the way. So that's exactly what we've done. We've got a 120D here. We're going to just turn that on, just get a little bit of light on the back of her hair. All right, so that gives us a little bit of highlight on the side of her hair here. It opens up her hair from behind. Just gives us a nice light on her, just opening things up a little bit. You see it start to open up the shadows just a little bit, mostly because there's so much white in the ceiling here. And that's something to really consider. When you have this much white in a ceiling, it bounces light all around. So every time we add a light, it's going to bring the shadows up. But the thing that's going to really help our shadows is we're going to just take a reflector, and I'm going to shove a reflector in here, and I'm going to start opening up the light on her face. Now we got it there, take that out, and yeah, that just opens up the light on her face right there. Now it's looking really good to me. I feel like we've got a nice rim light from behind, got a nice Rembrandt on her face. Just turn your chin towards me, yeah, right in there. Not too much, come back, but look in the camera for me. Yeah, right in there. I'm starting to feel like that looks very nice, but the light is all the same. We've lit her face, it's a little bright on her face. It doesn't fall off enough. There's no reason, there's nothing going on like seeing her hands in this down here. So we're gonna take, and I'm gonna bring in a fill card, not a fill card, I'm gonna cut this light off. When I add this card in on the left here, I can start to knock the light down just a little bit on her. See how that opens up on her shoulders? You can see that difference it makes there as it goes up. And that just takes a little bit of light off. The closer I can get that to her, the harder it cuts the light. The closer I get it to the light, then the softer it cuts the light. The light wraps around it, and so it doesn't quite cut just as hard a line. But as I get it in here closer, it's just a little harder line as it gets closer to her, and just takes a little bit of light out front. If I wanted to, I could back this out just a hair, and that would help me to knock some of that light off. And just gives us a little bit of light on her face. So there's our 3 light setup. We've got our key light, we've got a nice background light, and we've got a rim light from the camera right side. We've brought in a reflector to open up the shadows. That reflector is right underneath my 360 camera. I would actually want to shove this reflector in right here. It blocks the 360 view, but that just starts to give us a really open, nice shadow. I now can drop my exposure just a little bit for her face, and it's going to give us a really nice portrait there. Keeping this in here to make sure it knocks the light off from her. And that just gives us a nice, that's a little more moody, this is a little less, just depending on what we want, what we'd like to see there. First thing we're gonna look at with this 3 light setup is we've had a very small light on here, which gives us a really direct look at her face. It's very, very directional, very moody. You see deep shadows on the side, fast shadow to highlight transition. We're going to put a larger box on now that's going to give us a much smoother, much softer shadow to highlight transition. And that's going to make this a much softer portrait and a lot nicer on her face. So I'm going to change that out right now. All right, already we have a much softer light on her face, and you can see it, and it's very easy to see in that you really have a softer transition from highlight to shadow. It doesn't go highlight and then shadow, it goes highlight and it wraps into shadow. It's much nicer. We see a little more light on her ear because it's just by virtue of the fact that the box can see out further and sees into the shadow side of her face. So much nicer look on Raphael's face. We're going to go ahead and turn this off, our background light, and our rim light. So here's where we can use this larger box to make it more moody on her face and open up the background. I can dial this up now a little bit, and that's going to bring her face up and bring the background up. It's a little more moody on her face. When I roll this more forward, it opens her face up more. Dial this down, get correct exposure. And now in that background, I'm just going to do something very subtle. Got a very soft light up here. I'm going to take my background light, and I'm going to shoot it into this V-flat. I want to make sure I turn this V-flat so that the V-flat does not allow any light from this background to hit Raphael on the back or shoulder or hair. So I'll bring this right over here, nestle it into the V-flat. This gives me a directional light on the background. It's wrapping from camera right to left, which is the same way that her shadows fall on her face. We have the shadow side on the camera right side, and that light is coming in on the background on that same side. It gives us separation. We see complete separation there. We see separation in her hair, her shoulders. Just gives us a nice transition across the background. It's a little more directional rather than that kind of halo, which sometimes if it's not done right, that halo can look a little bit like the 80s, 90s portraits, where a little obnoxious. But when you go from left to right, it just gives us a nice gradation across that background. It's very nice. We can add our rim light again here. Turn that rim light back on. Now we get more of that separation. And it's just a different look at that background. We can make that background now as bright as we want it. We decide, okay, I really want that to be really bright. And it creates a lot of separation. Changes really the value of the gray seamless back there. Goes from a little darker to a little brighter. It's going to gradate across and it changes the look completely. If I take and add my card that's going to cut the light off from her body, it just makes us a little more focused on her face and doesn't let the light fall so much onto her body. Just a little card in here. Look, remember, if I put this in here close, if you look at her body there, the transition is softer. If I bring it in closer, the transition is harder. It cuts very close. As the closer you can get to your subject, the harder it cuts. And that's always something that's really important to know. So the equation goes on and on. It's a matter of, this is a butterfly and just rolls around to each one of the lighting positions. And if you can't remember what that is, check out the first lesson we did in this 360 series. And then it's just a matter of taking that equation and mixing it up. Harder light in the background, softer light in the background, harder light on the rim light, switching sides with the rim light, adding the rim light with your highlight, or going in and adding a larger, softer key light or a more hard directional key light. It's just a matter of how you add these together. In that equation, there's 3 lights, but as you add softness to it, it becomes a multiplicity of ways you can use them. It really does. When you go out to shoot on location, if you're shooting using a window or something, you now have, that's another additional item that's added to this equation. That window becomes your key light. Now, how do you add your second and third light with that to augment it, to make it look better? But it's all the same principles. You want separation, you want depth, and you use your lights to create that separation, depth, and interest. That's what light is. It creates separation, depth, and interest. And if you turn all your lights off, do you know what happens? There is no photography, there is no video. Nothing exists unless the lights are on. Because lighting is what makes the creative process go round. So keep those cameras rolling and keep on clicking.